Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video today. I'm out here on Lake Simcoe, and my goal today is to beat this weather that you saw coming in the opening there, to get a video done for you guys to show you my top 10 tips on using sonar on the ice. So let's get right to it. I always find it helpful to explain how things work, because when you know how things work, then you have a better understanding of different settings that you're able to change to make it work better. So let's talk about how the units work first, okay? We have a 12-volt battery which powers the display, which inside that display there's a PA transformer, power amplifying transformer, that sends a signal to the transducer, which then resonates that transducer. It sends a frequency through the water. Because we know how fast sound travels through water, we're able to calculate how far away that object is when that signal is returned. That signal is then returned to the transducer. The unit calculates where it is in the water column or on the bottom, and then it creates a picture for you on your display. So it's really important that you know how to read your screen. So let me show you on the unit now what we're looking at and how to read what we're seeing. This line here is my bottom. You can see over here I'm at 22 feet almost. This is my range scale, so I'm going from 0 to 25 feet. This is always set so your bottom is in the picture there. Now I'm going to open my bail here, drop my lure down, and there you can see it came in at about 5 feet, and now it looks like it's going down on an angle. And the reason is because this is the most current information here. This is where we want to look, what we want to pay attention to, and then it scrolls across the screen as it refreshes and updates. So you always want to be looking right on this side of the screen. This here is all history. So you can see I stopped the lure, and now I'll just jig it here. So now you can see it just jigging up and down like that. Now if a fish were to come in, it would be another line on the display there. Auto mode versus manual mode. Most units will have an automatic mode that will totally do everything for you. You literally turn the unit on and it's ready to go. Those settings are good for most people, but if you want to get the most out of your unit, definitely put it in manual mode, and you can fine tune what you're looking at on the screen. By doing this, this is going to help you differentiate targets. You'll see your lure much clearer. You'll see fish and be able to distinguish between how many fish are down there on the bottom. So by putting it in manual mode, you're going to get a whole bunch more information than you would in automatic mode that you can use to help you catch more fish by altering your presentation. When we're in manual mode, sensitivity, depth range, and color are the three things you're going to be primarily adjusting. As you go deeper or shallower, you'll have to adjust as well. What I really recommend is going out on the lake using auto for the first few times so you get familiar with how the unit works. Once you're familiar with it, turn auto off and use manual mode, and it definitely will help you fine tune what you're seeing down on the bottom. So I'm going to drop this guy down now and then show you how to properly set up the sensitivity and the color line on your unit. So there you can see I've held it at about 7 or 8 feet. I'm fishing in almost 22 feet of water, and I'm going to drop, oh, it looks like there actually might be a fish right there. Yep, there's a fish. There's 2 lines, so that's definitely a fish. Hard to tell how big it is. Probably just a perch. So I'm actually just going to drop it right down. Now you saw how small that lure was. It looked on the screen basically the same size as that fish. This is where tweaking this setting will help you differentiate between your lure and fish. When you set this, you always want to set it at the depth you're fishing. The deeper you go, the less sensitive your receiver is, so you have to turn your sensitivity up. So as you can see, I'm in auto mode. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to change that and this unit to custom. Some will say manual. Now I got a whole bunch more options here. So being that I'm in 22 feet of water, I'm actually going to go here, turn auto range off. Then I'm going to go to custom, and I'm actually going to set the actual depth that I want the chart to display. I always like to do it a couple feet deeper than I'm fishing in. So now you can see I have more water column here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. My lure is sitting basically at 20 feet right now, and it's showing up not bad. If I start to jig it a little bit, I'm getting some gaps in it there when I first started. The automatic mode kind of catches up, and then you see it again. So what I want to do is try and avoid that a little bit. I'm going to go to our sensitivity. We are going to take that out of auto. Now we have manual control. So now I can adjust this. Now you can see I'm also getting more color in it now. I typically would want to have a solid line when I'm jigging, I'm not losing anything. So that's how I would set my sensitivity. You want to set it as low as you possibly can to still mark your lure. Some units will also have a color line adjustment. If you have this, what you can do there is adjust the color so your lure shows up just as a blue color. We don't want any color in our lure. We want our lure to show up as the smallest target that the unit will pick up. And the reason being is hopefully the fish we're going to be catching are bigger. So when you get set up, you want to drill 2 holes. And the reason is you can keep your transducer in one hole and then fish out of the other one. This will eliminate any tangles or anything like that you may have when you're bringing that fish up. Now, if you're using a manual auger and you don't want to be drilling a bunch of holes because it's tiresome, there's no problem putting your transducer in that hole. It's always a good idea though to remove it when you do catch a fish so that it's not going to get tangled up when you bring it up. Question I always get asked is how far below the ice do I need to put my transducer? Should it be flush? Should it just be in the hole? Does it matter? Well, honestly, it doesn't really matter. I personally don't even use a float on mine. I just throw it in the hole, and then what I like to do is just make sure it's not angled in any way. So typically the way I would do it is have it so it is hanging down below the bottom of the ice. If it's sitting perfectly at 90 degrees with a float in the center at the top of the hole, there's nothing wrong with that. That will still give you that perfectly vertical 90 degrees. My advice, have it so it's below the ice. Keeps everything easy. I personally don't like the floats. Just again, if you're fishing out of one hole, it's just another thing for it to tangle up on, another thing for you to store. So that's the reason I don't like to use them. There's always been the debate, what is better, flasher or 2D sonar or chirp sonar on the ice? And you know what, that debate is pretty much over in my mind. I don't really see many scenarios at all that you need a flasher anymore. In fact, I mean, 2D sonar is almost on its way out with all the live sonar options. But for the sake of this video, flasher or 2D sonar, which one should you use? My recommendation is always use full screen sonar. Do not worry about the flasher screen that's in there. Now there's also a flasher on your 2D screen. This actually is called an Amplitude Scope, and it does a lot more than what the flasher can tell you. So that's why I recommend using the 2D or chirp sonar, because you'll get more information with that Amplitude Scope than you would with the round flasher dial. The reason this has always been a debate is in the past, flashers were mechanical bulbs that would spin around and they would update super fast. You literally could lift your lure up and see it instantly come up on the flasher display. LCD units always had a delay. Well, now there are some settings on the LCD units that you can adjust to get rid of that delay. Now I talked about the Amplitude Scope on the right-hand side of the screen as a type of flasher, but it does give you more information than a flasher will give you. This also tells you the signal strength. Now on a flasher display, or just if you didn't have your Amplitude Scope turned on the 2D display, the signal strength is showing up based on the color. So you can see the bottom is yellow, it's a hard signal. My lure is very small, so it's a weaker signal in the color spectrum that we're using. Now, if a big fish were to come in, it would show up as yellow, but you would also see it take up the full width of that Amplitude Scope. If you look up at the top of the screen in the surface clutter there, you can see right at the surface we have some wider marks, then a little bit narrower, and then wider again. So the stronger signals are going to be wider and the weaker ones narrower. So you can really get an idea if a big fish is coming in. So with that, take panfish for example. A lot of the times you're fishing a huge school and you're just catching small one after small one after small one. Well, you can see with this Amplitude Scope, are there any big ones down there that may not be biting? So then you can adjust your presentation or your lure to try and get those fish to eat. Now we talked about the delay that's typical on LCD units and how it's almost gone. And I talked about some settings that you can adjust to really get rid of that. So I want to take a look at that now. It's chart speed or scroll speed on some units and ping speed. Chart speed is how fast the image scrolls across the screen, and that would be scroll speed as well. Ping speed is how fast the transducer sends the signal out. So the higher both of those are, the faster the update rates will be. But they can go too high as well. So let me show you how to adjust them now. So on this particular unit, those two adjustments are found under advanced. We have ping speed at max. I'm going to turn it way down. You're going to see a delay. There is quite a delay there. Now if I turn that all the way up, that delay is pretty well gone. Now scroll speed, we have that set to normal. If I turn that up 2 times, My update is even faster because now not only is the transducer sending the information quicker, the screen is displaying it quicker. And I find this is really good if you're catching fish on a drop. You're able to see your lure dropping a lot smoother and a lot quicker. Now, again, you can turn that up. Yeah, it's very hard to understand and almost keep up with your mind. And again, you can turn that down really low and then it just gets totally useless. So where I recommend setting it is either at normal or just above normal. We basically want to match this to the movement of our lure. So to set it properly, just watch your rod tip. As you lift up, you want the lure to come up. As you put slack in the line and drop it down, you want to see it fall. That's when you're going to have your ping speed and your scroll speed or chart speed set perfectly. So through this video, I've mentioned 2D sonar, traditional sonar, chirp sonar, kind of as all interchangeable terms, and they are. But 2D sonar is typically what we're calling single frequency sonar, where there's just one signal being sent down at a time, and that's what's being displayed. Chirp sonar would be multiple frequencies, multiple signals being sent down at the same time at different frequencies, and each frequency is going to give you a different quality in the image that you're displaying. So which one should you use? My advice is experiment. Honestly, I use them both all the time. I start out with high chirp. That's typically what I would use in depths that I'm fishing today, like 20 feet of water. Now, if I were to go out into the main lake out here and maybe going after some big lake trout or burbot, something like that, that's when I would probably go to medium chirp, because that medium chirp is going to work better at those deeper depths. I've personally found that neighborhood of about 40 to 60 feet to where I would switch from high chirp to medium chirp. On the single frequency side, you're usually going to have 200 or 83 or possibly 77 depending on the model you own. So frequency here is an adjustment you can see in the menu. So now I'm on high chirp. Medium chirp now, I have a much wider sonar beam, so I'm going to pick up a lot more information. Now that I've changed frequency, I'm also going to have to go ahead and change my sensitivity and color line as well. One of the biggest benefits I've found to using high chirp is, again, when you're fishing for panfish or any schooling fish for that matter. I'm able to distinguish fish from my lure much easier using the chirp frequencies. I definitely get that key information that I need with the high chirp over the single frequency. For ice fishing, I always recommend using the tallest screen you can use, and that's because you'll see more information in the water column. Now, I've got a whole video on purchasing considerations for ice fishing units, so you can take a look at this card up here and watch that when you're done this video. But the tip I want to give you with regards to that is, if for some reason maybe you can't afford it, maybe you have a 5-inch unit kicking around with a very short screen, what you can do is use the zoom feature. And even on a 7-inch or 9-inch unit, I still recommend using the zoom feature because it will show you a lot more information than just using full screen sonar chart. So let me show you how to set up that page now. So on here we have no split as our option. We can go and do a zoom or bottom lock. Bottom lock will just keep the full screen zoomed in, but I like to do a split screen zoom. So now what I have is my full water column here. I can find any fish that are coming in, but I can zoom in on this side and I can adjust that zoom up and down as well. And I'll just get it up here. And now that zoom is between these two lines. So if I zoom in more, those lines shrink down and I fine tune exactly where I'm looking. So if I'm finding all the fish are hugging right on the bottom, what I can do is just scroll right down to the bottom, set that bottom line just above the bottom like this. This particular unit, I can zoom in 8 times. So looking from the bottom, which is about 22.7 feet, up to my lure, I'm 1.5 feet away and I'm taking up this much of the screen. Now that's quite a bit. I wouldn't usually do that, but just to illustrate the point, you can really zoom in tight here for fish that are hugging on the bottom. So if you're using a unit with a small display, you definitely need to be using the split zoom feature in order to see exactly what's going on below you. Now, this is my biggest tip for you in this video once you got your unit all set up, and it's to learn to read the fish's response to your presentation. So I got a fish coming in right now. There's one on the bottom. My lure is up there. He maybe just swam by. Now, he did not come up for that. What I can do is start pounding that lure into the bottom, seeing if I can stir something up down there to give him some interest to come back. Now let's say that fish showed some interest in the lure. I could have started to lift up pulling that lure away from him to try and get it to chase it. What you want to do is when you see a fish, determine what you need to do in order to catch that fish, to get that fish to bite. And generally speaking, most fish are in the same mood in the area you're fishing. So if you catch one way, you can usually duplicate it and do it again. So this is how using electronics really helps you put a pattern together while you're fishing. There you have it, guys. Those are my top tips to help you use your sonar unit on the ice this winter. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't bought an ice fishing unit, or maybe you're thinking of upgrading what you already have for this year, take a look at this video right here, and we're going to go through my top 5 purchasing considerations for ice electronics. I'll see you over there right now.